A poor girl finds a man crying alone on a bench. She comforts him without knowing his story. She had no idea he was a CEO left at the altar just hours earlier. Hello, viewer. Thanks for joining us. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. Christine Cooper woke before her alarm, eyes fluttering open to the grey light filtering through the peeling blinds of her tiny Lower East Side apartment. At 26, she felt far older than her years, though her warm amber eyes and cascading blonde curls hinted at a youthful optimism she refused to let go. That morning, her stomach rumbled, reminding her she had skipped last night's dinner to stretch her budget. Still, she smiled faintly as she caught sight of her camera, its body scuffed and worn from hours of street photography, resting on a nearby table. Photography was her lifeline, a conduit for hope, even when her bank account suggested otherwise. She'd planned to grab a cheap bagel on her way to a prospective shoot, but fate intervened when she spotted an elderly woman struggling with grocery bags near the building's entrance. Without hesitation, Christine set aside her hunger and hurried over. "Let me help you, ma'am," she offered, carefully distributing the weight of the plastic sacks. Although the woman's gratitude warmed Christine's heart, the short detour meant she'd miss both breakfast and the subway train she intended to catch. Yet, she never regretted placing someone else's needs above her own. Once she finally made it onto a crowded train, her phone buzzed. The caller ID read, "Rosen Realty." She sighed, knowing it wasn't good news. "Ms. Cooper, we're calling about your overdue rent," the clipped voice on the other end announced. Christine tucked a stray curl behind her ear, whispering apologies that felt inadequate. They gave her a final warning: pay within 10 days or face eviction. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment as she murmured her promise to find the money somehow. Emerging onto a busy street bathed in early sun, Christine tried to steel herself for the day ahead. She had a scheduled meeting with a small startup that needed promotional photos, a gig that could secure her rent for the next month. But before she could dwell on the landlord's ultimatum, her phone chimed again. The news was swift and direct. The startup had decided to cancel the shoot due to budget cuts. Stunned, Christine mouthed wordless protests, but the line went dead before she could argue. The final chance she had pinned her hopes on had vanished, leaving her anxious and uncertain. By the time she arrived home, her roommate, Mia Santos, was already sifting through textbooks at their wobbly kitchen table. Mia, 27, worked grueling shifts as an ER nurse, her steady gaze and warm smile revealing a deep well of empathy. With her dark hair pinned back and a slight accent reflecting her Brazilian heritage, Mia looked up the moment Christine shut the door. "You didn't even eat," Mia observed, concerned. "Another busy morning?" Christine sank onto a creaky chair. "Busy and fruitless," she admitted. She recounted the cancelled job and the call from the realtor. Mia listened quietly, then reached for Christine's hand. "I know it's tough," she said gently, "but something will come through. You're too good at what you do to stay stuck for long." Christine appreciated Mia's unwavering confidence in her, even if she struggled to feel it herself. She bit her lip, trying to quell a rising panic over rent and groceries. "I'm thinking of going to Central Park at sunrise tomorrow," she said. "Maybe I can get some new shots, something fresh. I heard about a local gallery seeking emerging photographers. I just need something that stands out." Mia nodded. "That's the spirit," she said, her tone hopeful. "Sometimes the best work comes when we feel we have nothing left to lose." She patted Christine's shoulder. "I'll be rooting for you." Late that evening, in the dim glow of a single lamp, Christine carefully cleaned her old camera lens. She reminded herself that there was still a world of wonder waiting to be captured, and if she could only convey that beauty to the right audience, maybe everything would align. Despite her exhaustion, she laid out her clothes and set her alarm for the early hour. Tomorrow morning, at the first light of dawn, she planned to head to Central Park, unaware that a single, fateful encounter would change her life forever. Christine stood at the edge of Central Park just before sunrise, a gentle hush blanketing the surroundings. The city behind her felt momentarily distant, as though Manhattan's ceaseless roar took a collective pause to watch the day begin. Her breath puffed in faint clouds as she positioned her tripod, adjusting the angle to capture the vast, tranquil lake against the pinkening sky. She usually sought the perfect shot, but this morning she yearned for more than technical perfection. She longed to capture something raw and heartfelt that might resonate with viewers, maybe even land her a new client. The air was cold enough to sting her cheeks, and she tugged her scarf tighter. As her camera clicked in rapid succession, she noticed a figure sitting alone on a bench some distance away. At first, she thought the man was merely lost in thought or enjoying the pre-dawn peace. But when she zoomed in through her lens, she spotted the glimmer of tears on his cheeks. His suit looked rumpled, his dark hair disheveled despite hints of silver at the temples that suggested meticulous grooming under normal circumstances. Instead of capturing the moment, Christine hesitated, finger hovering over the shutter. A pang of empathy shot through her. It felt wrong to exploit this intimate display of sorrow. She lowered the camera and let her gaze linger on him. There was something profoundly lonely about the way he hunched forward, shoulders trembling. In that instant, Christine recalled all the times she had felt alone, like after her father left, or when she first arrived in New York with more ambition than resources. She knew she couldn't just remain an observer. Slowly, she approached the bench, boots crunching on the gravel path. As she drew closer, the man seemed to register her presence and tried to straighten his posture, hastily swiping at his tears. She fished a small packet of tissues from her coat pocket and offered it wordlessly. His initial look was one of startled defensiveness, eyes a striking shade of blue, rimmed red from crying. Yet, the sincerity of Christine's gesture softened his expression. "Thank you," he muttered, dabbing his cheeks before speaking again, his voice catching on the cold air. "I'm sorry. Didn't mean to disturb anyone." "You're not disturbing me," Christine replied softly. "Sometimes. We just need to know there's someone out there who cares enough to notice." She hesitated, unsure if she should ask the obvious question, why he was crying so openly in the park at dawn. Instead, she sat at the far end of the bench, leaving space between them. For a few moments, an almost sacred silence enveloped them. The rising sun cast gold along the park's trees, and Christine found herself mesmerized by how the light illuminated his tear-stained face. She thought about taking a photo but decided it would feel invasive. He breathed a shaky sigh. "I appreciate your kindness," he said, still not meeting her eyes. "It's been a difficult day." The ironic twist of his lips suggested he felt that statement was an understatement. "I'm Henry." "Christine," she offered, meeting his gaze. She could see the weight of deep sorrow in his features, the kind that left no room for trivial small talk. Yet she sensed an underlying strength in him too, as though he was struggling to contain something enormous. Joe, the coffee vendor who made his rounds at dawn, ambled by and paused to watch them, sensing the tension of the moment. Usually, Christine might have greeted Joe, but now her focus was entirely on the stranger. She felt no urge to pry. Instead, she offered a small, understanding nod. Finally, Henry's shoulders slumped. "Thank you," he repeated, more earnestly this time. He tried to say more, but his voice cracked. Instead, he pressed the tissue to his face, grateful for the small mercy she had shown. Christine simply nodded again, letting him know it was all right to hurt without explanation. In that fragile dawn, compassion spoke louder than any perfectly framed photograph. Later that morning, Christine rushed through the bustling streets of Manhattan, her mind still lingering on the tearful stranger in Central Park. She kept wondering if she should have asked him more, offered more solace. But life in the city never paused for reflection. Her phone buzzed incessantly with reminders of her own problems, overdue bills, cancelled gigs, and the threat of eviction. She felt torn between the memory of someone else's pain and the stark reality of her own. First, she battled the impatient crowd into the subway, then headed to a small office near Midtown for a potential photography assignment with a local fashion boutique. Moments after she arrived, the store manager greeted her with cool impatience. Christine did her best to present her portfolio, trying to sound confident even as her voice wavered with residual exhaustion. But the manager, a sleek woman in her early 40s with sharp angles framing her face, glanced disinterestedly at Christine's work. "I'm sorry," she said curtly, flipping through images. "This isn't exactly our brand aesthetic." Trying not to let disappointment show, Christine thanked the manager for her time and left. Her shoulders slumped as she reached the sidewalk, the weight of rejection piling atop her existing worries. She held back tears. Self-pity felt useless in a city where countless others were also struggling to make their mark. She just needed that one break, that one chance. But it continued to elude her. Walking briskly, she nearly dropped her bag when her phone rang again. The caller ID read Rosen Realty, and her heart sank. "Miss Cooper," came the polite but firm voice on the line. "We need the rent by the end of next week. Please understand we can't grant further extensions." Christine swallowed hard, feeling her pulse spike. She promised once again to pay soon. She ended the call and shoved her phone into her coat pocket, blinking away tears of frustration. As she maneuvered around street vendors and tourists, the city's energy collided with her own frazzled nerves. She replayed Henry's sorrowful face in her mind, wondering if he had anywhere to turn or if he felt as adrift as she did. Finally, she arrived at the cramped apartment she shared with Mia. The moment she stepped inside, Mia was there, lunch half prepared, scrubs draped over a chair, and a stethoscope peeking from her purse. "Hey," Mia greeted, instantly reading Christine's mood. "What happened?" Christine sank onto the futon that served as their living room couch. "Rejected again," she sighed, massaging her temples. "Plus, more calls about the rent. I'm at a breaking point. I need a win." She glanced at the tattered photos taped to the wall, snapshots she had taken of bustling neighborhoods, quiet dawns, flickers of human emotion. Once, they had inspired her. Today, they felt like mocking reminders of a potential still untapped. Mia sat beside her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You did say you went to the park early this morning," she prompted gently. "Get any good shots?" Her voice was kind, but curiosity gleamed in her dark eyes. Christine hesitated. "I took a few pictures of the sunrise," she began, "but there was this man crying. I barely got any shots because I ended up trying to help him instead." Mia raised an eyebrow. "You actually put the camera down," she teased, but with warmth. "That's big. Are you okay?" "Yeah," Christine answered softly, tracing the worn strap of her camera. "I can't explain it, but it felt wrong to photograph that kind of pain without his permission. It reminded me of losing myself for a moment. I've always wanted to capture genuine emotion, but something about his grief felt off-limits." Mia nodded sympathetically. "That's your humanity shining through, Chris. You're not just a photographer. You genuinely care." She draped an arm around Christine. "And trust me, that kind of compassion matters more than you think." Christine smiled weakly, aware that while her empathy gave her a moral compass, it didn't pay the bills. Her gaze fell on her camera, and she resolved to check the shots she did take. Maybe, just maybe, something in them would spark the next opportunity, even if she couldn't forget the haunting image of a stranger's heartbreak in the park. That night, rain pattered against the single window of Christine's bedroom, reflecting the storm churning inside her thoughts. She sat cross-legged on her bed, laptop illuminating her anxious face as she typed "Henry Reynolds, CEO wedding cancelled" into a search engine. Part of her felt guilty prying into the stranger's life, but curiosity overwhelmed her. Earlier, she had found a business card in her coat pocket marked "Reynolds Financial," presumably dropped by Henry when they exchanged tissues that morning. She needed to know if this was, in fact, the same man rumored in local tabloids. A barrage of headlines popped up on the screen. High-profile wedding ends in heartbreak, CEO left at the altar. Rebecca Winters walks out moments before vows. Henry Reynolds's public humiliation. Christine's heart panged. The pictures attached to those articles showed a tall, broad-shouldered man with dark hair styled meticulously, a far cry from the rumpled figure she'd seen in the park. Still, his blue eyes were unmistakable. She skimmed the scandal's summary. Henry Reynolds, age 38, was a prominent financial executive widely respected for his sharp business acumen. His fiancée, Rebecca Winters, hailed from a prestigious New York family. The paparazzi had hounded them for weeks before the wedding collapsed at the 11th hour. Christine closed her eyes, imagining the intense pressure they both must have faced. She felt an odd mix of compassion and intimidation. He lived in a world of gleaming skyscrapers and black-tie galas, while she struggled to pay rent in a rundown apartment. Shaking off a wave of inadequacy, she reminded herself that everyone hurts, no matter their net worth. Her phone rang, and she almost dropped the laptop. Glancing at the screen, she saw Mom calling. With a resigned sigh, Christine answered. "Honey," her mother's weary voice echoed from Ohio. "You haven't been calling much." Christine braced herself, expecting the usual undertone of disapproval about her life in New York. Despite her mother's love, she never fully understood Christine's dream of pursuing photography. Tonight, the older woman sounded extra tired. "Sorry, Mom. It's been hectic. I'm juggling random jobs and trying to get my portfolio noticed. You know how it is." Christine fought to keep her voice steady. "Well," her mother said gently, "you know you can come back if things don't work out. I hate imagining you struggling like this." Christine pictured the diner back home where her mother waited tables for double shifts. That was a life Christine had fled, determined to chase something bigger. "I'm okay," she lied, forcing a cheerful note. "Really, I'm fine." After hanging up, Christine felt a swirl of guilt and longing. She missed home, but feared the weight of returning, defeated. Rising from bed, she paced to her makeshift darkroom corner, rummaging through prints from that morning's shoot. Most were of the sunrise, pale oranges bleeding into pinks across the sky. But a handful of images, captured on impulse before lowering her camera, included Henry in the corner of the frame. In one shot, he stood alone with his hands buried in his pockets, posture reflecting heartbreak even from a distance. She zoomed in, noticing the subtle stiffness in his shoulders. Mia gently tapped on her door, peeking in. "You still awake? Thought I heard you pacing." Christine gestured for her to come in. Together, they studied the photographs. Mia whistled softly. "That's definitely the guy you saw. But wait, there's a ring on his finger in that photo." Christine enlarged the image, indeed spotting a ring that looked more like a formal band than a decorative piece. An uneasy thought struck Christine. She had documented Henry's heartbreak before she even knew who he was. She felt torn between moral qualms about his privacy and the sudden realization that these images might be valuable, professionally and personally. A mixture of apprehension and curiosity welled up. Despite everything, she decided to tuck the prints away. Some lines shouldn't be crossed without a clear reason. For now, the soft glow of her laptop revealed more than enough to confirm they were worlds apart. It was early evening when Christine arrived at a modest benefit event hosted by a local arts non-profit in Soho. She'd landed a small gig photographing the charity auction for a blog, barely enough to cover her groceries that week, but she clung to it like a lifeline. The gallery space was industrial chic, with exposed brick walls and hanging Edison bulbs casting warm light onto the artwork displayed. Struggling with her bulky camera bag, Christine found a corner to set up and began snapping candid shots of patrons milling about. Her attention shifted when she noticed a tall, commanding figure stepping into the room. Henry Reynolds. His height was more striking in person than she remembered, perhaps because he now stood straight, no longer burdened by tears. The tailored suit he wore, though still subdued, fit him with practiced elegance. Christine felt her pulse quicken, 1,000 questions flooding her mind. She wondered if he would even recognize her out of the park's dawn shadows. She told herself to keep professional distance, focusing on capturing scenes for the blog. But every so often, her lens drifted toward Henry, who was speaking to the event's organizer, Sophia Chen, a poised woman in her mid-30s with impeccable fashion sense. Christine tried to steady her breathing, certain Henry wouldn't notice her amid the crowd until he did. Their eyes locked across the gallery, and his expression shifted from polite detachment to stunned recognition. "Henry," Sophia interrupted. "Are you all right?" But he merely excused himself and approached Christine. She could almost see the flash of confusion and relief in his gaze. The hustle of guests around them faded into the background. "You're from Central Park," Henry said quietly, as if double-checking the memory. His voice held warmth now, rather than the raw heartbreak she had witnessed. Christine felt a jolt of nerves. Yes, I'm Christine. I was there at sunrise a few mornings ago." She hesitated, then offered a tremulous smile. "I never expected to see you again." Henry looked almost grateful. "Nor did I, but I'm glad." He cleared his throat, glancing at her camera. "You're photographing the event?" "Yeah, just a freelance job," she replied, trying to sound casual. "It's not glamorous, but it pays some bills." A flicker of understanding crossed his face. Before he could continue, a voice boomed over the speaker system, inviting everyone to settle for the evening's presentation. Christine excused herself to capture some key shots of the featured art pieces and the donors seated in the front row. Through the camera's viewfinder, she spotted Henry occasionally turning to scan the room, as if searching for her. Her heart thudded with conflicting emotions, an odd mix of curiosity, sympathy, and an inexplicable pull. Later, after the formalities ended, she was rearranging equipment when Henry approached again. He angled himself so that no one else would overhear. "I hope I'm not intruding," he began, voice low. "I just wanted to thank you, properly. That morning in the park, I was in a very dark place." Christine met his gaze, noticing faint lines of fatigue around his eyes. "You don't have to thank me," she said gently. "You looked like you needed a moment of kindness. I was just there." He ran a hand through his hair. "Sometimes strangers can be more understanding than the people we think we know best." An awkward pause hovered. "This might sound out of place, but would you let me see some of your work? I'm genuinely interested." Uncertain, Christine found herself nodding. I'd like that," she managed. A swirl of questions clogged her mind. Did he only want to repay her kindness? Was this about business or something more personal? She sensed genuine curiosity in him, though maybe he admired the way she'd handled his vulnerability. They exchanged contact details. Henry slipping a sleek card into her hand before stepping away as more guests vied for his attention. Christine exhaled shakily. The odd connection they'd formed in Central Park was far from finished, it seemed, and as the night wound down, she felt an undercurrent of change weaving itself into her once predictable routine. Whatever happened next, she realized her life was no longer on the same path it had been just days before. At dawn's first glow, a thin wedge of light cut through the tiny kitchen where Christine and Mia huddled over mismatched coffee mugs. Mia, already dressed in her nurse's scrubs, eyed Christine with gentle concern. "You look like you hardly slept," she noted, stirring a spoonful of sugar into her coffee. "Something on your mind besides the usual stress?" Christine shrugged, tracing a chip in her mug's handle with her thumb. "I guess I'm still rattled by seeing Henry again. He asked to see my photography, my real portfolio." She exhaled slowly. "I'm not sure if I should show him everything. My personal shots are, well, they're personal." Mia's dark eyes flickered with empathy. "That's what makes your work powerful," she replied. "Don't hide the stuff that truly represents you. Otherwise, it's just another commercial pitch." She set her mug down and drummed her fingers on the chipped formica tabletop. "Besides, you said yourself he seemed genuinely interested. Let him see what you can do." Christine chewed her lower lip, recalling Henry's pained but hopeful expression at the art event. "I'm afraid of mixing personal vulnerability with whatever is going on between us," she admitted. "I mean, is he just being polite, or does he really see something worthwhile in my photos?" "People like Henry don't have time for polite gestures," Mia pointed out. "If he wants to see your work, it's because he's curious. And that's a good sign." Christine let her gaze wander to the patch of sunlight creeping across the counter. She couldn't deny that a small spark of excitement flared in her chest at the thought of showing Henry her beloved images. Dawn silhouettes of Central Park, intimate portraits of strangers, pieces of herself woven into every frame. "Okay," she said at last, inhaling a bracing breath. "I'll do it. I'll show him what I've really got." Before Mia could respond, Christine's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and saw Henry's name. Her stomach fluttered. Answering quietly, she heard his low voice. "Good morning, Christine. I hope I'm not calling too early?" She glanced at Mia, who mouthed, "Put it on speaker." Christine resisted the urge, pressing the phone to her ear instead. "No, it's fine," she said. "Is everything okay?" Henry hesitated, then cleared his throat. "I was wondering if you'd be free to come by my office this afternoon. I'd like to, well, to see the photos we talked about." Christine's heart hammered. "Yes, I can make that work," she replied, trying to sound composed. The more she talked, the more real it felt. She was about to open herself up to his scrutiny. After she ended the call, Mia broke into a grin. "See? He wants to see you and your work. It's a double win." Christine blushed, sipping her coffee to hide her reaction. She noticed Mia's unwavering belief in her, that same steady faith Mia had shown countless times before, like when Christine first moved in, broke, and uncertain if she could survive the city. "Thanks for being my mentor, Mia," Christine teased gently. "I owe you 1,000,000 free photos. Just promise me you won't run off to some fancy penthouse without me," Mia joked, winking. Then her smile softened. "But seriously, you've got this. Show him who you really are, not who you think he wants you to be." They talked through the morning hustle, the warm scent of coffee mingling with the distant rumble of garbage trucks outside. Before heading to work, Mia gave Christine a supportive hug. "You're stronger than you realize," she murmured. Left alone, Christine tidied their cramped kitchen, mind buzzing with possibilities. She flipped through her portfolio, pulling out glossy prints that showed her commercial side, wedding shoots, product photography. Then she set aside the images she cherished most, the quiet black and white shots of local neighborhoods at dawn, the raw emotions of strangers captured candidly. Those were the photos that might truly reach Henry, and if she was honest with herself, she wanted him to see beyond the surface. Later that afternoon, Christine entered the towering glass skyscraper of Reynolds Financial, feeling dwarfed by its soaring lobby of polished marble. She clutched her portfolio case, nerves thrumming like a live wire. As she approached the reception desk, a woman with impeccable posture and neatly pinned brown hair regarded her with mild suspicion. "Do you have an appointment?" Christine mustered her calmest tone. "Yes, with Mr. Henry Reynolds. My name's Christine Cooper." After a quick phone call upstairs, the receptionist nodded and directed her to the top floor. Stepping out of the elevator, Christine found herself in a hushed corridor flanked by glass-walled offices. A sign reading, "Henry Reynolds, CEO," pointed her to an imposing set of double doors. Before she could knock, one of them swung open, revealing a serious-looking woman in her early 40s, Diana Harrington, Henry's executive assistant, according to the nameplate on her desk. Diana scanned Christine up and down, eyes briefly settling on her worn portfolio case. "You must be Miss Cooper," Diana said, lips pressed into a polite line. "Mr. Reynolds has been waiting." She led Christine into a spacious office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Sunlight flooded the room, catching the spines of carefully arranged books on a walnut shelf. There, behind a wide desk, stood Henry, tall and sharply dressed, yet somehow approachable. At the sight of Christine, a warmth spread across his features. "Thank you, Diana," Henry said softly. "That'll be all." With a curt nod, Diana left, shutting the door behind her. Henry motioned for Christine to sit on a comfortable leather chair, one that felt surprisingly cozy despite its corporate environment. She tried to steady her shaky hands as she opened her portfolio. "I brought a mix of photographs," she began, summoning her best professional voice. "Some of these are from commissioned jobs, but there's also my personal work." "I hope that's all right." Henry seated himself on the couch opposite her, rather than behind the desk. "I asked to see your real perspective, so yes, please show me both." She started with her commercially viable pieces, wedding portraits, a product campaign for a small jewelry brand, and a few moody shots for a local musician's album cover. Henry nodded politely, occasionally asking thoughtful questions about lighting or background choices. He studied each image with careful attention, revealing an interest that felt genuine. Nerves crackled in Christine's stomach when she reached for the second portfolio, her personal collection. Here lay the heart of her artistry: black and white shots of city backstreets, candid smiles from unsuspecting subjects, and fleeting moments of raw vulnerability. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed each print on the low coffee table. "These are less polished," she admitted. "But they mean more to me." Henry leaned forward, scanning a photograph of a homeless man quietly feeding pigeons at dawn. They have a different energy," he remarked softly. "It's like you're capturing something unguarded." "They're powerful, Christine." She found herself breathing more freely at his words. "I've always believed that real emotion shines through when people don't know they're being watched," she explained. "It's why I felt conflicted taking pictures of you that morning, but that's exactly the kind of moment I usually seek." Henry's expression turned contemplative. "I see, and I appreciate your restraint," he said, recalling how raw his emotions had been. He paused on a shot that showed Central Park in early light, and if Christine looked closely, she could see his figure in the background, just a silhouette. He eyed her questioningly, but didn't comment directly on it. Then he set the pictures aside carefully, meeting her gaze. "These are extraordinary," he said. "They reflect a depth, like you see the world through compassion." I want to help you find a wider audience, if you'll let me." Christine's heart pounded. She was just a struggling freelancer. Could she afford to trust him? Still, the sincerity in his voice stirred her hopes. Maybe, she thought, this was the opportunity she'd been longing for, a chance to bridge the gap between survival and truly living her passion. To Christine's surprise, Henry insisted on personally driving her to dinner that evening. He picked her up in a sleek, black sedan, an understated model that spoke of refinement without flashy ostentation. The difference from her life was startling. In her worn jeans and a simple blouse, she wrestled with feeling out of place. Still, Henry greeted her with an easy smile, opening the passenger door with genuine courtesy. She expected a white tablecloth restaurant with sky-high prices. Instead, Henry drove them to an upscale rooftop bistro in Midtown, known for its stargazing terrace. The elevator ride up to the top floor felt electric, each ding pushing Christine's heart rate higher. She wondered if this was strictly business or something more. When the doors opened, soft twinkling lights draped overhead, creating an intimate glow against the city's skyline. A maître d' named Antoine, older with silver hair, showed them to a candle-lit table near the edge of the terrace. Christine glanced at the polished cutlery and tasteful floral centerpiece, trying to steady her nerves. As they took their seats, Henry leaned in slightly. "We wanted a place we could talk without all the usual noise," he explained, gesturing to the glittering city below. "Thank you," she murmured, focusing on the mesmerizing skyline to calm herself. "It's beautiful up here." She caught sight of a few other tables filled with well-dressed patrons. A faint swirl of jazz from inside the bistro drifted out onto the terrace. Antoine returned with menus, greeting Henry cordially, though Christine noticed the subtle condescension in his glance when she only sipped water first. Brushing it off, she let Henry recommend a dish or two. Moments later, they placed their orders, and a wave of nerves subsided once she realized Henry wasn't trying to impress her with extravagance, but rather share a quiet evening together. "How long have you been photographing professionally?" Henry asked, swirling the ice in his glass of water. "From your pictures, it feels like you have a deep understanding of people, not just angles and lighting." Christine tucked a stray curl behind her ear. "I moved to New York 5 years ago," she replied, "started assisting wedding photographers, then got some small freelance gigs, but it's always been about capturing genuine emotion for me." "I love finding those hidden stories in a person's expression," Henry nodded, seeming genuinely engrossed. "It's interesting," he said, "how your lens finds honesty. I admire that." His gaze drifted momentarily to the shimmering skyline. "In my world, honesty can be rare." Their conversation meandered from Christine's early days in the city, her cramped apartment, the hustle for each paycheck, to Henry's childhood memories. She learned he wasn't always immersed in privilege. In fact, his parents had struggled to build the financial empire, leaving Henry to navigate a maze of expectations he never fully embraced. His voice softened as he recalled simpler times, playing stickball in a modest neighborhood before his family's wealth skyrocketed. Christine watched him carefully, seeing a flicker of genuine warmth beneath the polished exterior. That, she realized, was the Henry she had glimpsed in the park, someone who bore hidden wounds beneath the suit and success. "That's part of why I photograph," she offered, "to uncover what people might not realize they're showing." A small smile tugged at his lips. "You make it sound brave," he said quietly, "letting someone like you see them so clearly." As the evening wore on, they shared laughter over dessert, which Henry insisted they eat out on the terrace. The city lights twinkled, resembling a constellation of hopes in the distance. Christine felt a surprising ease settle between them. Yes, the differences in their backgrounds remained stark, but in that soft glow under the stars, Each revealed vulnerabilities that bridged the divide. They finished their meal, sated by conversation as much as food. Henry walked Christine back to his car, the night air cooler now. Before opening her door, he paused, meeting her eyes. "This was nice," he said, voice earnest. "I'd really like to see you again, if that's all right." Christine's heart fluttered. Despite the uncertainties, she found herself nodding. "I'd like that too," she whispered, noticing that in just a few hours he had made her feel more valued than some people she'd known for years. The following morning, Christine awoke to a flurry of notifications on her phone. Several unknown numbers had texted her, and when she opened social media, she found her face tagged in photos from the rooftop bistro. A local gossip page had snapped a shot of her and Henry leaning in close. The caption read, "Mysterious photographer steals CEO's heart," accompanied by speculation about Henry's broken engagement. Christine's stomach knotted. She had never wanted this kind of attention. Cursing under her breath, she flipped through the comments. Some were surprisingly supportive, others nasty or mocking. The phone rang, jolting her from her dismay. "Christine, honey?" her mother's familiar voice asked from Ohio. "Are you all right? I saw an article online. Your aunt forwarded it to me. There's a picture of you and some fancy man." Sighing heavily, Christine sank onto the futon. "I'm fine, Mom. It's just gossip. Nothing to worry about." She tried to sound convincing, but felt her mother's tension even through the crackling line. After reassuring her mother that she wasn't in danger or being used, Christine ended the call. The experience left her unsettled. She typically kept her private life out of the spotlight. It felt odd to be scrutinized for simply sharing a meal with someone. Making matters worse, she had pulled up her old camera files from the park, curious to see if there were any more shots of Henry hidden among them. Sure enough, she'd captured him walking with Rebecca a few weeks before the wedding meltdown, both looking stiff and distant. The tension in their faces was palpable, even though the shot was wide and nearly out of focus. In the small living room, Mia was folding laundry while sipping coffee. She glanced up as Christine emerged from her bedroom, camera card still clutched in one hand. "You look rattled," Mia commented, concern shading her voice. Christine explained the gossip photos and her uneasy discovery. A handful of images showing Henry and Rebecca looking troubled before their public breakup. Mia whistled under her breath. "So, you took pictures of him and Rebecca without realizing who they were, and now you have proof their relationship was strained even then." Christine swallowed, recalling how Henry had told her about the wedding fiasco. "I'm not sure I should show these to him. It might feel invasive," she admitted. "They reveal cracks in their relationship he might not be ready to see publicly, or maybe he already knows. Either way, it's complicated." Mia folded a shirt methodically. "Henry might appreciate your honesty if it comes from a place of respect, but yeah, you should tread carefully." Still feeling uneasy, Christine headed out to run errands, partly to clear her mind. By afternoon, a light drizzle began to fall, the sky turning grey over Manhattan. Ducking into a cafe for shelter, Christine nursed a latte while scrolling through headlines on her phone. Reports speculated that Henry's ex-fiancée, Rebecca Winters, had left him at the altar due to irreconcilable differences, but none of the articles revealed the full story. Christine wondered how Henry felt about being the subject of endless rumors. She found herself recalling his pained expression on that park bench, the raw vulnerability in his eyes. The tenderness she had witnessed was so unlike the polished image painted by tabloids. After a few minutes of quiet thought, she pulled out her phone and composed a text. "Hey Henry, just wanted to check in. Hope you're handling all the press okay. Let me know if you need anything." His reply came swiftly. "Thank you, Christine. It's nothing I haven't faced before, but I appreciate your concern." Sighing, She sipped the last of her latte, her thoughts circling back to the photos. Maybe Henry deserved to see them, these glimpses of a past he might already be grappling with, yet part of her resisted, worried about dredging up old pain. She closed her eyes against the drumming rain, uncertain how to respect both her integrity and Henry's feelings. A few nights later, Henry arrived at Christine's Lower East Side apartment, bearing a bottle of wine and a bouquet of wildflowers. Mia opened the door in her comfortable sweatpants, eyes widening at the elegant man in the hallway. With a friendly grin, Henry introduced himself. "I'm here to see Christine." Mia's cautious demeanor lifted slightly. "Right, come in." She welcomed him into the cramped living room, which Christine had attempted to tidy earlier. Though the faded wallpaper and battered couch contrasted sharply with the luxurious spaces Henry frequented, he showed no sign of judgment. Instead, he offered the flowers to Christine with a tentative smile. "That's so thoughtful," she breathed, setting them in an old mason jar on the kitchen counter. Their meager living area glowed under dim, warm lighting, revealing photos pinned to walls and Mia's textbooks scattered about. The mouth-watering aroma of chili simmering on the stove drifted across the room, courtesy of Christine's impromptu cooking. Henry removed his suit jacket, folding it over a chair. "Something smells amazing," he said, glancing at the small pot on the stove. Christine laughed. "Hope you're okay with home-style cooking. Nothing fancy, just chili and cornbread." He shook his head. "It's perfect. I missed home cooking more than I realized." There was a trace of wistfulness in his voice that made Christine's chest tighten with sympathy. She remembered how he'd mentioned childhood dinners were rare in his busy household. Mia waved them into the tiny kitchen nook, inviting Henry to sit at the wobbly table. Conversation flowed more naturally than Christine expected. Between spoonfuls of chili, Mia peppered Henry with questions about his background. "So, you run a huge financial firm. What's that actually like day to day?" Henry smiled wryly. "Non-stop meetings, analyzing numbers, dealing with board members who think you can't possibly know enough because you're not them, apparently." His tone carried a hint of dry humor. "Sometimes I wonder how I got here in the first place." Mia exchanged a knowing glance with Christine. "Well, at least it's stable," Mia said, "unless your boss is a jerk or your co-workers are incompetent. That's half the battle in any job, I guess." She rose to fetch another round of drinks, leaving Henry and Christine momentarily alone. Rain tapped softly on the window's metal frame. Christine fiddled with her fork, nerves dancing in her stomach. "This is different than what you're used to," she said, referencing their humble surroundings. Henry's eyes traveled around the apartment, taking in the chipped paint and collage of personal photos tacked to the wall. "It's warm," he replied simply, "and I don't just mean the chili." His gaze settled on a photo of Christine and Mia smiling at a street fair, both holding enormous cotton candy. "It feels like a real home." Touched, Christine smiled. "It is. Mia and I have been through a lot together. She's practically my sister." She paused, steeling herself to bring up a topic she'd been avoiding. "I wanted to tell you, I found a few pictures in my files. Ones where you and Rebecca appeared in the background, from before that morning in the park. I didn't mean to take them, but they're there. If you ever want to see them or talk about them, I'm here." Henry's face clouded momentarily, a flicker of hurt dancing across his features, but he reached for her hand. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I'd appreciate seeing them sometime, just not tonight." Christine squeezed his fingers in response, letting the moment pass without further scrutiny. Mia returned, the conversation shifting to lighter topics: favorite music, embarrassing childhood stories, the best pizza places in Manhattan. Laughter flowed freely, and Christine felt a rare sense of belonging as Henry leaned back in the flimsy chair, looking genuinely at ease. When the meal ended, Henry insisted on helping wash the dishes, ignoring Christine's protests. As they dried the last plate, he turned to her with a soft intensity. "Thank you for sharing your world with me." Then, under the flickering light of the old overhead bulb, he leaned in and kissed her gently, the simple gesture bridging their once divergent lives in a moment of undeniable closeness. A week later, Christine found herself clutching Henry's arm as they stepped into a grand mansion in the Upper East Side. The event was a charitable gala hosted by Henry's family, the Reynoldses, an influential clan known for their philanthropic gestures and old money connections. Christine's heart pounded at the opulent sight of marble floors, glittering chandeliers, and impeccably dressed guests circulating with champagne flutes. Henry gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. He wore a tailored tuxedo that made him look every bit the accomplished CEO. Christine, in a borrowed cocktail dress courtesy of Mia's cousin, felt a knot of nerves tighten in her stomach. Her reflection in the polished floors reminded her that she was stepping into a world leagues apart from the cozy, modest life she knew. "Just be yourself," Henry whispered, guiding her toward a receiving line where his parents stood. First, Christine met Richard Reynolds, a tall, silver-haired man of few words. He managed a curt nod, his gaze assessing her swiftly before shifting elsewhere. Then came Margaret Reynolds, poised at 65 with an air of aristocratic Polish. Her salt-and-pepper hair was perfectly coiffed, her elegant gown swirling with each movement. Margaret offered a thin smile. "Welcome," she greeted Christine. "I've heard a great deal about you." Christine mustered her most polite smile. "Thank you, Mrs. Reynolds. It's an honor to be here." She could practically feel Margaret's gaze sweeping over her borrowed dress and scuffed heels. Henry, sensing the tension, placed a hand lightly on Christine's back. "Mother, where's the donation table? We'd like to make a contribution before everything gets started." Margaret's delicate features revealed nothing but a practiced graciousness as she guided them toward a lavish display of silent auction items. Henry scrawled a signature on a check that made Christine's eyes widen, then escorted her away from the curious stares. They mingled briefly, greeting various socialites and business associates. More than one asked Christine, in a slightly patronizing tone, if she was the new girlfriend or an event photographer. She did her best to remain cordial, politely clarifying that she wasn't working tonight, but attending as Henry's guest. Then came the moment Christine secretly dreaded. Rebecca Winters, Henry's ex-fiancée, swept into the ballroom. She wore a stunning silver gown, her polished beauty radiating confidence. A wave of hush seemed to follow her. Rebecca approached with a carefully curated smile. "Henry," she said, letting her eyes flick over Christine, "I didn't expect to see you so soon at one of these events." Henry's grip on Christine's hand tightened a fraction. "Rebecca," he acknowledged, voice steady. "I'm here to support my family's foundation and to introduce my—" He paused slightly. "My girlfriend, Christine Cooper." For a split second, Rebecca's composure faltered. She offered Christine a polite nod, though her gaze felt like a veiled challenge. "Pleased to meet you. I've heard you're quite the photographer." Then she turned her attention back to Henry, lowering her voice. "We'll talk later," she murmured, as though Christine's presence were merely incidental. Henry tensed, but Rebecca vanished into the crowd before he could respond. Christine swallowed hard, a swirl of insecurities rising in her chest. She noticed Margaret watching from across the room, her expression unreadable. Determined to hold her head high, Christine accompanied Henry through the evening's program, speeches, toasts, and a brief live auction. Yet the entire time, she felt like she was under a magnifying glass. Eventually, needing air, Christine slipped out onto a secluded balcony. The city lights glowed beyond the mansion's manicured gardens. She tried to inhale the cool night breeze, but her composure wavered. Moments later, Henry appeared behind her, draping his jacket over her shoulders. "You okay?" he asked softly. She nodded, though tears pricked her eyes. "It's just overwhelming," she admitted. "Rebecca, your parents, all these people sizing me up like I don't belong." Henry turned her to face him, concern written across his features. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "Let's get through tonight, then go somewhere simpler, just us." Christine rested her forehead against his lapel, grateful for the reassurance, yet painfully aware that shadows of the past still loomed over their budding bond. Late one evening, Christine carefully wrapped the prints she'd taken of Henry and Rebecca in Central Park, her heart pounding with uncertainty. She had decided it was time to show Henry these images, even if it threatened the fragile trust blossoming between them. True connection, she reasoned, could only come from total honesty. When Henry opened the door to his apartment, Christine noticed traces of tension in his posture. The large windows showcased New York's shimmering skyline, but an uneasy hush weighed on the room. "Thanks for coming," he said, ushering her in. His demeanor was polite, yet subdued, as though he sensed she had something serious to discuss. She offered a nervous smile, clutching the small portfolio under her arm. "I have something I need to show you," she began. They settled on his living room couch, side by side. Taking a fortifying breath, Christine pulled out the photos, moments captured weeks before his wedding day. In the images, Henry and Rebecca stood together on a Central Park path, their expressions distant. Tension and sadness were etched into their faces, clear as day in Christine's lens. Henry's jaw tightened. "So it really was us," he murmured, setting one image on the coffee table. He stared at it, a wave of conflicting emotions crossing his features. "I had no idea you'd captured these." Christine reached for his hand, but hesitated. "I'm sorry. I didn't realize who you were at the time. I only discovered these later, and I wasn't sure how to tell you." He pressed a palm to his temple, eyes closing briefly. "Thank you for being honest," he said quietly. "I've seen enough headlines and paparazzi pictures, but these feel different. You caught something raw." Her voice trembled with compassion. "Can you tell me what happened?" "I only know what the tabloids have said." She braced herself for the possibility that he might shut down or brush her off. Henry's gaze flickered to the skyline. "Rebecca and I were incompatible," he began, carefully selecting his words. "We had issues long before the wedding day. I was too focused on business. She wanted a certain lifestyle. But the tipping point was the prenup I modified a week before the ceremony." He exhaled sharply, memories flashing through his mind. "I wanted to protect my employees from ruthless cost-cutting measures that my extended family and Rebecca's family were pushing for. It meant not funneling all my assets into some trust that benefited only a few shareholders. Rebecca felt betrayed, thought I was siding against her parents." He ran a hand through his hair. "When she discovered the final draft of the agreement, she claimed I'd be humiliating her family financially, so she walked out. On the day of the wedding." Christine's chest tightened with empathy. "That must have been devastating." She remembered the tearful Henry on that park bench, the heavy weight of abandonment visible in his eyes. He swallowed. "Embarrassing, painful, you name it. But the truth is, I'm not sorry I did what I felt was right. I just wish things hadn't ended like that." They fell into a contemplative silence. Outside, headlights flitted across the walls, illuminating the vulnerability etched into Henry's posture. Christine placed a hand on his arm, finally allowing herself to offer comfort. "I'm not judging you," she whispered. "I think protecting people who rely on you was admirable. It shows you have integrity." He turned to meet her gaze, gratitude flickering across his expression. "Thank you," he murmured, voice thick with emotion. I suppose you know my biggest secret now." Christine offered him a tentative smile. "You trusted me with it," she answered. "I won't betray that trust." They lingered in that moment, shadows dancing around them, both keenly aware that the photos, tangible proof of a broken engagement, were no longer just snapshots from a painful past. They were now stepping stones toward an intimacy defined by honesty. And for the first time since the tabloids had plastered his heartbreak across every page, Henry felt less alone, certain that Christine saw beyond the headlines to the man he was still becoming. Christine walked the bustling streets, the morning sun catching the reflective surfaces of skyscrapers. Despite the crisp autumn air, she was sweating under her coat. Her rent deadline loomed, and she had nothing left but a maxed-out credit card and an optimistic pitch to a photography blog that might buy some of her images. Anxiety churned in her stomach, urging her to find a solution, any solution. She nearly jumped when her phone rang. The caller ID was unknown, but she answered in hopes of a potential client. Instead, a smooth voice introduced himself as Maxwell Grant, editor of a well-known gossip magazine. "Miss Cooper," he said with a friendly lilt that felt too slick. "I heard you might have some interesting photographs related to Henry Reynolds. Let's just say we're prepared to pay very well for anything revealing." Christine's grip tightened on her phone. Had he discovered she captured candid shots of Henry's failed engagement? "I'm not interested," she snapped, trying to mask her sudden tremor of panic. Grant's tone remained polished. "I understand your hesitation, but I'm aware you have financial pressures, student loans, overdue rent. We could help you, and it would barely make a dent in our budget." Heat rushed to Christine's face. She recalled the frustration of scrounging for money each month. How her father once left her family chasing a bigger paycheck. She fought the urge to ask how much the magazine was offering. "My pictures and personal information aren't for sale," she said, hoping she sounded more resolute than she felt. Grant let out a low chuckle. "Honor is admirable, Miss Cooper, but it doesn't keep the lights on." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Think about it. If you change your mind, my number's here." Then he ended the call. Christine stood frozen on the sidewalk, heart pounding. The conversation replayed in her mind as she trudged onto the blog's cramped office near Midtown. Inside, a harried editor barely glanced at her portfolio, offering a fraction of what she'd hoped. After a moment's deliberation, Christine accepted, figuring it was better than nothing, but even then, she'd still be short on rent. The moral compromise Maxwell Grant proposed slithered into her thoughts. Could she betray Henry's confidence and solve her money problems? That night, the stress consumed her. After a late shift, Mia returned to find Christine hunched over the kitchen table, face buried in her hands. "What's wrong?" Mia asked gently, dropping her purse on the couch. Christine lifted her head, eyes heavy with guilt. She recounted the call from Grant, the money woes, the pressing rent. "I'm so close to being evicted," she whispered. What if I just gave them something trivial, a harmless detail? I wouldn't have to show them the personal photos. But maybe I could." Mia's expression hardened. "Are you hearing yourself? Henry trusted you, and you're considering selling him out." She folded her arms. "I know it's tough, Christine. I see your struggle. But you're not that person. Don't become like your dad, chasing cash at any cost." A lump formed in Christine's throat. She vividly remembered her father's hollow promises, leaving her and her mother behind for bigger paychecks and a new life. She closed her eyes, tears threatening. "You're right," she whispered, voice trembling. I can't do it." Mia relaxed, resting a hand on Christine's shoulder. "Good. You'll find another way, even if it's not easy." Later, in the quiet darkness of her bedroom, Christine typed a single text to Maxwell Grant. "I'm not selling Henry Reynolds's photos. Don't contact me again." Her thumb hovered before she pressed send, feeling a mix of relief and terror. Once done, she stared at the screen, her breath coming in slow, steady beats. Choosing integrity meant she might lose her apartment, but as she set the phone aside, she reminded herself she wasn't for sale. The cost of ambition had a limit. Her conscience was not negotiable. A frigid wind rattled the window panes of Henry's apartment as rain lashed the city. Inside, Christine sat near the living room's floor-to-ceiling windows, anxiously awaiting Henry's return. She'd come over to discuss her impending eviction notice and the possibility of a short-term loan. The idea made her uneasy. She despised mixing personal finances with budding romance, but she saw no other path. When Henry walked in, droplets clinging to his coat, Christine noticed his distracted expression. He was carrying a thick folder stuffed with documents. "We need to talk," he said, voice taut. The urgency in his tone set her nerves on edge. "What's going on?" she asked softly. She watched as he shrugged off his coat, water splattering onto the hardwood floor. The heaviness in his eyes alarmed her. Henry exhaled, dropping the folder on the kitchen island. "My uncle and the board want me to relocate to London," he explained. "They claim I'm vital for expanding our European division. There's significant pressure, family expectations, business needs. It's complicated." Christine's stomach twisted. "Relocate? For how long?" She tried to keep her voice steady, even as panic fluttered in her chest. He ran a hand through his damp hair. "A few years, maybe more. I've known the possibility for a while, but I didn't know how to tell you. Then it became official last week." Guilt etched his face. Shock rippled through Christine. She thought of her precarious finances, her fragile photography career. The synergy they'd begun to cultivate felt suddenly threatened by oceans and time zones. A flash of anger surfaced. "You've known for a week and didn't say anything. Did you think I wouldn't care?" Henry winced. "I wasn't sure how to handle it. My family's given me no choice, claiming it's the only way to strengthen the business globally." Outside, a gust of wind rattled the windows, thunder rumbling in the distance. Christine stood, her voice unsteady. "So I'm the last to know. While I'm over here agonizing over rent and job opportunities, you're secretly planning to leave." "That's not fair," he retorted, frustration creeping into his tone. "I was hoping to find another solution. Maybe I could push back, negotiate terms. But they cornered me. I was looking for the right moment to tell you, I swear." She fought back tears, recalling her father's abrupt departure and how it shattered her mother. "This is exactly the kind of blindsiding I've been through before," she said, voice cracking. "When people leave, it leaves scars." Henry's face softened. "Christine, I'm not your father," he pleaded, stepping closer. "I'm trying to figure this out, to see if there's a way we could—" Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the turmoil within the apartment. A clap of thunder reverberated, matching the storm inside Christine's heart. "You know what?" She cut him off, overwhelmed. "I can't do this right now. I can't handle you keeping secrets and expecting me to be okay with it." "Wait," Henry said, reaching for her arm. "We can work through this. I don't want to leave you. She pulled free, tears finally slipping down her cheeks. "I need air," she blurted, rushing to the door. Before Henry could respond, she was gone, the rain welcoming her with icy, stinging droplets as she stepped onto the street. The storm raged around her as she darted through puddles, choking back sobs. She felt foolish for hoping her bond with Henry was unbreakable. Memories of that morning in Central Park resurfaced, Henry sobbing on a bench, vulnerable and alone. Now, she felt that same despair. Love, it seemed, was no guarantee against life's brutal twists. Soaked to the bone, Christine eventually stopped under a dimly lit awning, breath coming in ragged gasps. She told herself she'd return to Henry, maybe talk things out. But for now, she needed to escape the swirl of emotions, unsure whether the real storm lay outside or within her own breaking heart. Days passed with no word from Henry. Christine had spent much of that time on Mia's couch, mired in uncertainty. Between scouring job listings and packing boxes in anticipation of eviction, she felt on the brink of collapse. Yet, in her quieter moments, she recalled the raw sincerity in Henry's voice, the anguish in his eyes. A part of her missed him fiercely, but she couldn't ignore the sting of his secrecy. One dreary afternoon, as Christine was sealing a box of her belongings, Mia burst through the door with a flurry of excitement. "Have you seen this?" she exclaimed, waving a flyer for a prestigious photography showcase in Chelsea. "They're doing an open call for emerging photographers. Submissions close in 2 days." Christine glanced at the flyer, heart fluttering. The event was known for launching careers, and participants often gained serious media attention. "It's a long shot," she said softly, "and I don't have money for the entry fee." She tapped the taped box, thinking about her looming eviction. Mia folded her arms. "There's a small scholarship fund. You're talented enough to get it. Stop hesitating." She pressed the flyer into Christine's hand. "This could be your calculated risk, one that pays off." Encouraged, Christine spent the next day curating her best shots, including her personal, emotive series. She submitted an application, crossing her fingers for the scholarship. That night, she drifted into a restless sleep, filled with dreams of half-lit galleries and the echo of camera shutters. Meanwhile, on the other side of Manhattan, Henry faced his own battle. In an ornate boardroom at Reynolds Financial Days, he confronted his Uncle Thomas and several stern-faced directors. "Relocating me to London might help short-term expansion," Henry argued, "but we risk losing our foundation here if I'm not around." Thomas Reynolds, a dignified figure with silver eyebrows and a custom cane, regarded Henry coolly. "You're part of this family business, and your role is vital. The board made it clear you need to oversee our European strategy. Why must we have this debate again?" Henry's jaw tightened. "Because I believe we can create a hybrid model. I can travel between London and New York instead of uprooting everything. Remote work, strategic visits. I refuse to be forced to live abroad indefinitely." The board members exchanged glances. Some rolled their eyes at what they perceived as Henry's stubborn streak, yet a few recognized the changing global landscape where technology could bridge continents. "That's unorthodox," one murmured, "but maybe workable." Thomas frowned. "Our family has traditions, Henry. You can't just rewrite them because of convenience or personal attachments." Henry inhaled sharply. "I won't lose everything I've built in my personal life for the sake of a decades-old tradition. This is my compromise. If it's unacceptable, then maybe I need to reconsider my position." A stunned hush fell. Threatening to step away was bold, and Henry knew it. But he also knew what was at stake, both for Christine and for his own integrity. Finally, Thomas sighed, tapping his cane on the polished floor. "We'll consider your proposal," he said tersely, "but don't expect an easy pass." That evening, as Henry left the office, he found a message from Daniel Hoffman, his friend and attorney, praising his gutsy stand. Henry felt a faint swell of hope. With time, perhaps he could shape a path that didn't force him to abandon Christine. The next day, Christine received a call from the Chelsea showcase coordinator. "We're pleased to offer you a scholarship for the exhibition's entry fee," the woman said, voice bright with approval. "Your work has genuine emotional resonance." Joy erupted in Christine's chest, momentarily overshadowing her troubles. She allowed herself a cautious surge of optimism. Her risk seemed to be paying off, yet as she stared at the packing boxes in her apartment, a reminder of looming reality tempered her excitement. She felt torn between a bright professional horizon and the heartbreak still lingering over Henry's silent phone. Slowly, she realized that forging her own path, uncertain as it might be, was the only route to true independence. And perhaps, if Henry truly wanted to remain in her life, he would do what he must to meet her there, somewhere between duty and desire. Central Park glowed with the muted hues of late afternoon. Golden sunlight filtered through thinning autumn leaves, forming a dappled pattern across the familiar bench where Christine now sat. She had arrived early, summoned by a simple text from Henry that read, "Meet me where it all began." Her pulse thrummed with anticipation and a flicker of trepidation. She scanned the path, recalling how she first found him here, tears marking his cheeks. Now, her own eyes misted at the memory. How much had changed in just a few months, yet how uncertain the future remained. When Henry finally appeared, tall frame outlined against a backdrop of orange and red foliage, Christine felt her breath catch. He approached slowly, as though unsure whether she'd welcome him or turn away. A gentle breeze carried the park's earthy scent between them. "Hey," he said, voice tentative. She noticed he looked tired, the strain of recent decisions evident in the shadows beneath his eyes, but there was determination in his posture. Christine stood from the bench, heart hammering. "Hi," she replied, hating how formal she sounded. For a moment, they both lingered there, neither sure how to begin. Then Henry gestured to the bench. "Mind if we sit?" Settling side by side, they gazed at the lake shimmering in the distance. Silence enveloped them until Henry exhaled. "I fought my family," he said, tone subdued but resolute. "I refused to be shipped off to London like some corporate pawn. And they didn't shut me down. They're considering a part-time schedule, half in London, half in New York." Relief coursed through Christine, though caution kept her elation in check. "That's big, so you won't be gone permanently." He shook his head. "I might have to travel more frequently, but I'd keep my home base here. I'd still have time for us." He turned to face her, eyes reflecting hope. "But only if that's what you want." Christine inhaled the crisp air, searching her heart. "I was scared," she admitted, voice trembling, "scared that you'd leave without telling me, that I'd be left behind or sacrificed to your obligations. I guess I freaked out." Henry placed a gentle hand over hers. "I was wrong to keep it from you. I should have trusted you sooner." His voice wavered with regret. "But I'm here now, ready to fight for us if you'll let me." She studied his expression, recalling how he had once seemed so out of reach, an affluent stranger drowning in tears at dawn. "This can't be easy," she said softly, thinking of the distance, the logistics, the looming possibility of heartbreak. "It's not," he acknowledged. "But I've learned that letting the people I care about slip away is even harder. I've done it before, and it led me down a lonely path." Christine felt the walls around her heart begin to crumble. She remembered her father's abandonment and how deeply that wound ran. Yet Henry's raw honesty felt like a balm. "I believe in us," she whispered. "I just need to know you won't vanish the moment a board meeting demands it." He squeezed her hand. "I promise I'll talk to you, communicate, so we can face any challenge together." They fell quiet, the sun dipping lower, painting the sky in amber and rose. A gentle hush seemed to draw them closer until Henry broke the silence. "I love you, Christine," he said, voice thick with emotion. "I don't want to lose that chance because of fear or family pressure." Tears sprang to her eyes. She recalled the swirl of emotion she'd felt since day one, how compassion had led her to sit beside a stranger. Overcoming a trembling breath, she whispered back, "I love you too, Henry." The words felt both fragile and powerful, as though forging a new promise. They leaned against each other, letting the park's soft hush cradle their confession. Though countless obstacles still stretched before them, her uncertain finances, his demanding career, this moment of unity felt like a beacon. Together, they would find a way to walk forward, hand in hand, forging a path that honored each of their dreams, without forsaking their shared hope for something lasting, something real. Christine stood in the middle of a bustling gallery, surrounded by half-hung photographs and scattered tools. Bright overhead lights cast stark shadows across the white walls. Her heart fluttered between exhilaration and dread. Tomorrow evening, she would unveil her first major exhibition in Chelsea. She checked the clock on her phone. It was nearly 10 p.m., and the curator, Sir Julian Clark, had promised to lock up soon. All around, assistants hurried to finalize placards, while the hum of last-minute drilling and ladder climbing filled the air. Christine paused by a large print of her most personal photo series, candid shots of Central Park at dawn, capturing fleeting human emotions. In one frame, a silhouette of Henry stood at the periphery, almost unrecognizable, except to her. Nervous energy coiled in her stomach. This was the moment she had pursued for so long, yet she felt a trembling fear that she wouldn't live up to expectations. From across the room, Julianne approached with a careful smile. Tall, elegant and discerning, she offered a thumbs up. "The lighting's perfect, Christine. I think the crowd will be moved by your work." The curator's voice had an encouraging lilt that reminded Christine to breathe. But the weight of everything, her precarious finances, the new arrangement with Henry, and the eyes of the art world pressed heavily on her. Her phone buzzed. She fumbled for it, glancing at Henry's name on the screen. Stepping aside from the clamor, she answered in a hushed tone. "Hey," she said softly, her voice echoing in the near-empty corridor outside the gallery showroom. "I'm guessing you're still there." Henry's familiar warmth carried through the line. "How's it going?" Christine lowered herself onto a stool. "Chaotic, but exciting. I can't believe I'm about to show my work in a real gallery setting." Henry's tone brightened. "I've seen your photographs, and you deserve this. Tomorrow will be incredible, trust me." She smiled despite her nerves, imagining his reassuring presence. "Thanks," she murmured, "but I'm terrified. The critics, the buyers, the critics." She repeated the word in a near whisper, as though conjuring an ominous force. Henry's gentle laugh soothed her. "They'll love your authenticity. That's what drew me in, after all. I'm sorry I can't be there tonight to help, but I'll be front and center at the opening." A small wave of relief washed over her. "That means a lot," she replied, picturing his steady blue eyes. As they said their goodbyes, Christine's anxiety lessened, replaced by cautious hope. She re-entered the gallery, where an assistant was labeling her works. Each piece had a story. Each frame represented moments she'd captured with empathy and an unflinching gaze. She noticed a few passers-by, a volunteer, a friend of the curator, stopping to admire the raw emotion in her photographs. That tiny gesture of appreciation buoyed her spirits, reminding her why she created art in the first place. By the time the last photo was aligned and the final bits of tape were peeled from the floor, midnight approached. Julianne gave Christine a quick hug. "Go home. Rest," she insisted. "Tomorrow, you'll need all your energy." Christine nodded, though her mind still buzzed with last-minute fears about lighting angles and proper introductions. Outside, the crisp night air slapped her cheeks. She paused under the glow of a street lamp, hugging her coat tight. Even the city seemed quieter, as if anticipating the big reveal. She shut her eyes briefly, picturing her lonely arrival in Manhattan years ago, a suitcase in one hand, a battered camera in the other, and a dream that felt impossibly large. Now, on the brink of her first gallery exhibition, she stood at the crossroads of everything she'd ever wanted. Gathering her resolve, Christine hailed a cab back to her apartment. Despite the exhaustion, she felt a stirring inside, a hum of determination. For the first time, her art would stand in the spotlight, and though doubt lingered at the edges of her heart, she knew she had to face it, ready or not. The next evening, a swirl of energy filled the Chelsea Gallery. Under the golden glow of track lights, well-dressed patrons sipped champagne, moving between Christine's photos with keen interest. She could hardly believe this crowd. Critics, collectors, local celebrities had gathered to experience her work. Nerves knotted in her stomach, but the flush of excitement kept her upright. At one side of the room, Mia hovered protectively, offering moral support. In the other corner stood Henry, looking polished in a tailored suit, quietly observing the steady flow of viewers. Their eyes met, and Christine felt a surge of gratitude. He gave her a small, encouraging nod. She inhaled, stepping forward to greet a critic from a respected art publication. Lawrence Bennett, a seasoned reviewer with owl-like glasses, peered closely at a black-and-white image of a homeless man feeding pigeons at dawn. "Remarkable emotional resonance," he murmured, jotting quick notes. The tension in Christine's shoulders eased. This was a good sign. Bennett's approval meant potential glowing coverage. Buoyed by that moment, she moved on to greet guests, answering questions about her style and influences. Her heart pounded each time a new group gathered around her Central Park series. These prints were personal, a raw glimpse of everyday life. Would the audience see the hope she tried to convey? As she wove through the crowd, Christine spotted Rebecca Winters entering the gallery, swathed in an elegant dress that captured immediate attention. A hush followed her. People parted as if she commanded an invisible force. Christine's stomach lurched. Rebecca was the last person she wanted to see on her big night, yet there she was, scanning the photographs with an unreadable expression. Within moments, Rebecca approached, her polished smile eerily calm. "Congratulations," she said, voice low. "I heard about your exhibition and thought I'd see for myself." She glanced over a photo featuring Henry's silhouette. "You have an interesting eye." Christine forced a cordial tone. "Thank you." "I appreciate your coming," she managed. Her gaze flicked toward Henry, who was making his way over, concern etched on his face. Rebecca lifted a delicate eyebrow. "Henry," she greeted him pointedly, ignoring Christine now. "This is quite the showing. Did you invest in it?" Henry kept his composure, though a faint tension tightened his jaw. "I'm here as Christine's guest and supporter," he said. "But if you're implying I financed her exhibit, you'd be mistaken." A small crowd nearby sensed the friction, their curious gazes turning the situation into a mini spectacle. Christine's cheeks burned. She prayed for a moment of calm, but Rebecca seemed bent on stirring the air. "I see," Rebecca replied, each word thinly veiled. "Well, I wish you both the best. People do love a good redemption story." Henry squared his shoulders, his voice calm but firm. "Yes, they do, and Christine's talent speaks for itself. Let's not distract from her accomplishments tonight." A flicker of annoyance crossed Rebecca's features, but she quickly turned on her heel, gliding toward another corner of the gallery. Christine exhaled a shaky breath, relief mingled with leftover anxiety. Henry gently touched her arm. "Are you all right?" She nodded, still rattled. "Thanks for standing by me." Henry gave a small smile, his voice pitched low. "I'm proud of you. This is your night." Before Christine could respond, a hush fell. Julianne Clark stepped to the center of the gallery to announce the main presentation. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us to celebrate the work of Christine Cooper, a remarkable new voice in photography. Her images remind us of everyday humanity and the luminous possibility that often goes unseen. Applause broke out, carrying warmth through Christine's entire being. She felt tears prick at her eyes, but quickly blinked them away. This was it, the moment she had dreamed of. She spotted Mia, who gave a thumbs up from across the room, and Henry, whose unwavering support steadied her nerves. In that charged space, with the entire room celebrating her vision, Christine recognized that the past heartbreaks and obstacles were shaping into a triumphant present. Regardless of Rebecca's presence or any lingering doubts, Christine felt a surge of conviction. Tonight, her voice was heard, and she wouldn't let any shadow from the past steal her hard-won limelight. In the weeks following her successful gallery opening, Christine found herself juggling unexpected shifts in her life. Sales from the show had been promising, with critics praising her authentic style. She woke each day feeling a subtle mixture of excitement and apprehension, excited by new prospects, apprehensive about how success might change her. One crisp morning, she met Henry at a cozy cafe in the Upper West Side. The scent of freshly baked scones and roasted coffee greeted them as they settled into a booth. Outside, the world seemed to slow under the pale winter sun, but inside, Christine's mind whirred with all that had happened, moving out of her old apartment, finalizing her debts, and pondering future projects. Henry sipped his latte before speaking. "I'm glad we both had a breather from the chaos of the exhibit," he said. "Congratulations again on the positive reviews. You deserve every bit of it." Christine smiled shyly. Despite their closeness, she still felt an odd twinge discussing her success with him. "It's strange," she confessed. "I've always dreamed of recognition, but now I'm dealing with interviews, potential collaborations, and this real sense of pressure to deliver something even better next time." He nodded, understanding flickering in his eyes. "Pressure can be tough, but it can also refine your focus. I've seen how you thrive when you follow your instincts. Don't lose that." His words made her think of the times she questioned her worth, how she'd balanced precariously between despair and ambition. She glanced around the cafe, noticing the reflection of their faces in a large, mirrored panel. It struck her how different they were, yet how their reflections merged in a single frame. "I'll try," she said softly. Over the rim of her mug, she studied him. "What about you? Any updates on the London situation?" She knew he was negotiating the new corporate plan that allowed partial relocation rather than full abandonment. Henry set his latte down, turning serious. "It's in progress. I'll likely be traveling more frequently soon, but I don't have to uproot my entire life. The board's warming up to my hybrid idea, though Uncle Thomas remains skeptical." He paused, tapping a finger on the table. "I've decided to create a philanthropic division within the company too, one that supports the arts and social causes. It's something I've dreamed of doing for years." Christine's heart lifted at the notion. "That's incredible. So it's not just about finances. You're opening doors for meaningful contributions." He offered a gentle smile. "Exactly. My father always insisted our family fortune should do more than multiply zeros. I guess I'm finally doing it on my terms." Then his smile faded slightly. "But I worry about the demands on my time. With me jetting to London and you traveling for potential photo assignments, will we be able to hold everything together?" She thought of the precarious balance they'd already navigated. "We can, if we make it a priority to stay connected. Communication, scheduling visits, maybe meeting each other abroad sometimes. We'll figure it out." As if on cue, her phone buzzed. A quick glance revealed a new inquiry, an international magazine interested in featuring her in a Europe-based story. Christine let out a soft laugh. "Funny timing, right?" Henry reached across the table, lacing his fingers with hers. "Maybe it's more than timing. We both see the world from different angles, but we want to make a difference in it. That's something worth holding on to." She felt a swell of affection. "I agree," she whispered, "though it's scary, imagining us splitting time between continents, forging new routines." His gaze was warm, the mirror on the wall capturing them from behind, reflecting their shared determination. "We'll be each other's mirrors," he said gently, "making sure we stay true to who we are." Christine nodded, letting hope rise within her. Amid the swirl of success and future uncertainties, she knew they had something solid, an unspoken understanding that every step forward meant seeing themselves and each other with honesty and care. 2 months later, winter's chill still clung to the air, though faint hints of spring teased the city's sidewalks. Christine and Henry found themselves standing in an empty apartment near Central Park, a place they were considering renting together. Large windows framed treetops that would soon burst with green. The space was spacious enough for her to set up a makeshift studio, yet cozy enough to feel like home. Christine ran her hand along the blank walls, heart fluttering with a mixture of excitement and hesitation. She pictured her framed photos gracing the living room, while Henry might place a polished desk near the window for his remote business calls. "It's perfect," she breathed, but then added, "Are we sure we're ready for this?" Henry took a step closer, sliding an arm around her waist. "I know it's a big move," he acknowledged. "But if we're going to split time between New York and London, it might help to have a comfortable base here, one that's ours, not just mine or yours." They had spent countless evenings discussing practicalities, from co-managing finances to ensuring Christine kept her artistic independence. Treading that fine line between shared life and individual goals felt daunting. Yet the notion of building something together stirred a deep sense of fulfillment. After the showing, they met with a realtor in the building's lobby. Paperwork was exchanged, and after discussing lease terms, they emerged onto the busy street holding hands, an almost surreal sense of promise settling over them. "So, a month from now, we could be living together," Christine mused, scanning Henry's face for any sign of doubt. He brushed a curl away from her forehead, smiling. "Yes, and splitting time in London for my job. You might be traveling for photography stints, but we'll handle it." His tone carried unwavering certainty. In that moment, Christine recalled the day she first arrived in New York, overwhelmed yet determined. She realized how far she'd come, her gallery debut, growing recognition, and a partnership defined by honesty rather than illusions. "All right, let's do it," she whispered, leaning in for a brief kiss. His smile against her lips felt like a seal of an unspoken pact. Later that afternoon, they sat with an attorney to sign initial arrangements, outlining property responsibilities, dividing costs. Henry insisted on ensuring Christine maintained separate finances so she'd never feel controlled. Christine insisted she contribute her fair share, even though her income was far from predictable. A gentle friction arose, each determined to protect the other from financial strain. Ultimately, they agreed on a balanced approach, blending practicality with respect for independence. Mia helped Christine pack her old apartment over the following weeks. Together, they sorted through boxes, deciding which furniture to donate and which photographs to keep. As they loaded a charity donation truck, Mia paused, a nostalgic glimmer in her eyes. "Feels like the end of an era, huh?" Christine smiled softly, recalling nights they spent huddled on that battered futon, hashing out their next moves in life. "It does," she agreed, "but you're always welcome at the new place. We'll have a real guest room, no more futon nightmares." Mia laughed, pulling her into a quick hug. "I better see my name on the door." Underneath the humor, Christine sensed Mia's quiet pride in how far her friend had come. They were stepping into a more grown-up chapter, each forging their own path. When moving day arrived, Henry showed up in casual jeans and a t-shirt, rolling up his sleeves to help the movers. No fancy chauffeur or assistant. As he hauled boxes, he chatted with Mia and joked with the neighbors. Christine watched him with a new appreciation. He might be a successful CEO, but he was also a partner ready to share the weight of a heavy box or an uncertain future. By dusk, the new apartment echoed with stacked cardboard, half-assembled furniture, and the promise of a life built on mutual effort. Leaning against a wall, Christine caught Henry's eye. They both smiled, exhaustion mingling with an undercurrent of excitement. Here, in this space still waiting to be shaped, they were laying the foundations of a tomorrow that honored everything they'd struggled to achieve. Together. The evening sky over Manhattan shimmered with the first flakes of winter snow, drifting gently past the windows of the still unfinished apartment. Christine stood in the living room, newly furnished yet echoing with possibilities. She and Henry had officially moved in a week earlier, and cardboard boxes still lined the walls, awaiting final unpacking. Tonight, they planned a quiet celebration, just the two of them, to mark how far they'd come. Henry prepared a modest dinner, insisting on using the new cookware they'd pooled their resources to buy. The scent of roasted vegetables and garlic bread wafted through the space, blending with the faint aroma of fresh paint. Music played softly in the background, a mellow jazz tune that soothed the edges of a busy day. Halfway through setting the table, Henry disappeared into the hallway, returning moments later with a small, gift-wrapped box. Christine looked up in surprise. "What's this?" she asked, pressing a napkin flat against the table. He met her gaze, a glint of anticipation in his eyes. "A little something," he said, placing it in her hands. "I know everyone's expecting some cliché ring or grand gesture," he added, voice quietly playful. "But you and I have never done things the traditional way." Christine's heart thumped. Her mind flitted to daydreams of a ring, of course, but Henry's words hinted at something more personal. Peeling away the paper, she revealed a worn leather case that made her breath hitch, an antique camera case. Carefully, she unlatched it, lifting out a vintage Leica camera. Its metal body bore fine scratches, proof of decades of prior use. Tears pricked her eyes. She recalled offhandedly telling Henry weeks ago about her fascination with vintage cameras, especially the Leica models that shaped early photojournalism. She never expected him to hunt one down. "Henry," she whispered, running her fingers over the dials. "This is incredible. How did you find it?" He shrugged, looking almost shy. "A friend put me in touch with an antique dealer, and we tracked down this model. It was used by a pioneering female photojournalist in the 1950s. I thought it could remind you of the artists who came before, how their courage paved the way." Christine swallowed hard, a wave of gratitude rolling through her. "It's perfect," she said, voice thick with emotion. "More perfect than any ring could ever be." Henry exhaled, relief and affection mingling in his smile. "I wanted you to have something that says, 'I see your passion, I value it, I believe in it.'" Moved, she cradled the camera carefully. "Thank you," she murmured, leaning in to kiss him. The gesture felt intimate, an affirmation of their shared understanding, love born not just from romance, but respect for each other's dreams. They finished setting the table in a contented hush, the snowfall outside casting a gentle glow through the windows. Over dinner, they talked about the new philanthropic division Henry was launching, about the upcoming photography project Christine had lined up. They confided fears and hopes, weaving plans for how they might support each other through globe-trotting assignments and corporate deadlines. After they cleared the dishes, Christine insisted on capturing a photograph with her new camera. She set it on a tripod in the living room, adjusting the focus. Henry slipped his arm around her waist, the boxes of half-unpacked belongings framing them in the background. She pressed the shutter release, hearing the mechanical click, a moment preserved forever. Two people forging a life together, unafraid to be unconventional. As a final flurry of snow sparkled against the glass, Christine held the camera close. She realized it symbolized not just a gift from Henry, but a promise. They might not have a traditional engagement or wedding ring, at least not yet, but they had something stronger, a shared vision. In that modest living room with city lights twinkling below, Christine felt tears of gratitude and joy blur her vision. This was where their real story began, with every snap of the shutter capturing the infinite beauty and vulnerability of a life built on love, respect, and authenticity. A brisk, foggy morning settled over London's River Thames, where Christine and Henry strolled hand in hand. 6 months had passed since they began splitting their time between New York and Henry's new office in London. Each journey bringing fresh challenges and discoveries. The damp air carried a faint tang of the river, reminding Christine of all the changes swirling through her life. They'd come to London for Henry's corporate obligations, but Christine, camera slung over her shoulder, found herself entranced by the city's layered history. The two had spent days exploring hidden lanes and market stalls, Christine snapping photos of local characters and architecture. Just that morning, she'd captured a tender moment, an elderly couple embracing by the water, illuminated by the soft grey light. Now, as they paused at a stone parapet, Henry leaned against the cold railing, tension etched on his face. "The board's finally accepted the philanthropic division I proposed," he said, gazing across the water to where old buildings mingled with modern glass towers. "I've secured initial funding, but there's a catch." Christine pulled her coat tighter. "What is it?" His expression grew thoughtful. "They want an official launch event, an art exhibition, charity auction, and press coverage. They're counting on me to headline it. I'd like your photography to be part of it, if you're willing." She blinked, caught off guard. Her recent success in New York had brought offers of gallery spots in Europe, but this request felt personal and strategic. "You mean exhibit my photos under the company's banner?" He nodded. "Partly. But also, it would be a chance to support local community art programs. We can highlight new voices while raising funds. I know it's short notice, just a couple of months, but if we pull it off, it could be a cornerstone for the philanthropic division." Christine inhaled the cool London air, weighing the idea. She pictured a grand event in some stately British hall, her photography displayed alongside Henry's corporate associates. Could it merge their worlds in a meaningful way? "I love the idea of helping local artists," she admitted, "but I want to ensure my work isn't just a publicity tool." Henry's eyes warmed. "I'd never let them exploit your art. You'd have full creative control. And we'd invite emerging photographers who share your vision. It won't be about glossy marketing. It'll be about real impact." A subtle wave of relief touched her. Over the past months, they'd learned to navigate these exact fears. Her worry of being overshadowed by corporate interests, his concern about bridging personal passion with business. "If that's the case," she said slowly, "then yes, I'm in." He exhaled, tension unwinding from his posture. "Thank you. I promise you'll have the support you need." She smiled, leaning in to rest her head against his shoulder. Together, they watched a barge drift by, its low hum blending with the city's distant bustle. For a moment, neither spoke, content to let the hush of water swirl around them. Christine recalled the day she first glimpsed Henry in Central Park, tears on his cheeks. Now they stood an ocean away from that bench, united in purpose rather than heartbreak. Eventually, they turned away from the river and made their way through a nearby market. Christine snapped pictures of vendors selling fresh produce, fish, and bread, her curiosity piqued by the overlapping cultures of London's crowds. Henry accompanied her patiently, occasionally teasing about how many times she could photograph the same stall from different angles. They ended up sharing a quick meal at a modest cafe tucked between old brick arches, the aroma of warm pastries keeping them cozy. With each sip of tea, they solidified plans. Henry would confirm dates for the philanthropic launch, and Christine would begin gathering artists who might exhibit alongside her. This next adventure, they agreed, could merge their ambitions in a way that honored both her artistry and his leadership. As they ventured back onto the bustling streets, Christine felt the tug of her camera, reminding her that every moment in life was fleeting yet ripe for capture. New tides were rolling in, both literally on the Thames and metaphorically in their shared story. And though challenges lay ahead, their bond felt ever steadier, proof that when two worlds converge, they can create a current strong enough to propel them both forward. A month later, Christine and Henry returned briefly to New York for a special occasion, Christine's latest exhibition celebrating her European photography series. The event was modest compared to her Chelsea debut, held at a small Manhattan gallery where she'd first received local recognition. Still, the turnout impressed her. Friends, fellow photographers, and a few curious critics who continued to follow her emerging career. Mia greeted them at the gallery entrance, beaming. "Welcome home, even if it's just for a short visit," she teased, hugging Christine. "And you," she added, eyeing Henry with playful scrutiny, "better take good care of her in London. Don't let her freeze or starve while she's snapping pictures of Big Ben." Henry laughed, hugging Mia in return. "I'm doing my best," he promised, "though she's the one braving the cold at dawn, not me." Inside, the gallery was warm and inviting. Simple frames of Christine's London and Paris shots lined the walls, capturing centuries-old architecture and everyday city life. A soft piano track played from hidden speakers, creating an intimate ambience. "Your photos have grown deeper somehow," Mia observed, as she and Christine wandered through the display. "It's like you're focusing more on hidden corners, quiet gestures." Christine nodded, recalling how her perspective had shifted since living part-time abroad. "I love the grandeur of Europe, but I'm drawn to the overlooked details, moments that reveal the soul of a place." In a corner, Henry chatted with a small group about the upcoming philanthropic event he was organizing in London. Christine watched as he effortlessly navigated conversations about art funding and corporate responsibility. Though he seemed confident, she knew the pressure weighed on him. Months of negotiations with the board had left him juggling multiple deadlines. Yet, seeing him champion creative causes alongside corporate goals warmed her heart. He was making the sort of difference he'd always yearned to make. Later that evening, after the gallery emptied, they locked the doors and found themselves in a quiet Manhattan night. The crisp air nipped at their cheeks, and Mia insisted they grab dinner at a nearby diner, a nostalgic ritual from their leaner days. The fluorescent-lit interior smelled of French fries and freshly brewed coffee. Sliding into a booth, the three of them pored over laminated menus, joking about how success hadn't dulled their craving for greasy American fare. As they waited for their orders, Christine's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, tension rippling across her face. It was her father's name, George Cooper, the man who had walked out on her and her mother so many years ago. She hadn't heard from him in ages, aside from the occasional guilty text at Christmas. Swallowing, she answered, "Dad." A hoarse voice crackled on the line. "Christine, I heard about your success. Your mom told me you'd be in town." A pause. "I'd love to see you. Talk. If you'll let me." Christine's pulse fluttered with old wounds. She caught Mia's worried glance and Henry's supportive nod. "All right," she said, forcing calm. "I'm at Webster's Diner, near 14th. You can come by if you want." When she hung up, her heart pounded. She'd spent so long resenting his absence, building a life in New York without him. Now, faced with the possibility of reconciliation, she felt uncertain. Mia reached across the table, clasping her hand. "We'll be here," she offered softly. Henry, sitting beside Christine, placed a comforting hand on her back. "You don't have to do this alone," he reminded her. She nodded, inhaling a shaky breath. Perhaps bridging this gap with her father was yet another step in forging a new path, one that no longer let past pain define her future. In the reflection of the diner's window, Christine caught sight of her own anxious expression, Henry's calm resolve, and Mia's loyal concern. Much like an ocean separating continents, she realized bridging these emotional distances demanded courage. Whether in love, family, or career, every crossing proved the power of connection. And maybe, just maybe, this moment was a chance to find peace and closure long overdue. A thin veil of anxiety settled over Christine as she waited in the diner. She half expected her father never to show, but within 20 minutes, the door chimed. In walked George Cooper, a man in his early 60s with wisps of thinning grey hair and a tentative look in his eyes. He spotted Christine and approached slowly, wringing his cap between his hands. Mia, recognizing the tense awkwardness, slid out of the booth. "I'll let you two talk," she murmured. With a kind nod toward George, she stepped aside. Henry stood as well, whispering to Christine that he'd be right by the counter if she needed him. Feeling her heart pound, Christine gestured for her father to sit opposite her. The decades of distance and unanswered questions hung between them like a curtain, both longing to part it, yet unsure how. "Been a long time," George said softly, placing his cap on the table. His weathered face bore traces of regret. "You look grown up." He nearly smiled, as though the obvious observation might lighten the mood. Christine folded her arms, reminding herself to stay calm. "I am grown up," she replied, voice tight. "You left when I was barely a teenager." He nodded, eyes dropping to the speckled tabletop. "I know. I'm sorry." A quiet confession lingered in the air. "I messed up, chasing a better life that never really panned out. I miss so much, your graduation, your milestones." He trailed off, his tone laden with remorse. She fiddled with a napkin, torn between anger and a faint compassion. "Why now?" she asked bluntly. George sighed. "I've been sick," he admitted. "Nothing life-threatening, but enough to make me realize how much time I've wasted. I spoke to your mom. She told me about your photography, your exhibitions. I was proud, in my own distant way." He attempted a small smile that wavered. "I just wanted a chance to see you, to ask if maybe we could start over." Christine's throat felt tight. Waves of childhood heartbreak rolled through her, moments of waiting by the window, birthdays celebrated without him, the quiet tears her mother tried to hide. She inhaled deeply. "I can't erase what happened," she said, voice trembling, "but I'm willing to talk. I don't promise anything beyond that." George's eyes shone with grateful tears. "Thank you," he whispered. "That's more than I deserve." A silence followed, broken only by the clink of silverware around them. Christine's gaze traveled to the counter, where Henry and Mia pretended not to watch, while keeping a careful eye. Taking a fortifying breath, Christine asked, "So, what's your life like now?" Stammering slightly, George explained his current job at a small auto repair shop in New Jersey, the meager apartment he'd rented. No grand illusions or excuses. Christine found his humility unsettling, yet strangely reassuring. He wasn't spinning any false tales of sudden wealth or success. He seemed earnest in his desire to reconnect. They spoke haltingly, exchanging pieces of their separate histories. When the conversation lapsed, Christine gestured for Henry and Mia to join them. Her father watched, visibly nervous, as Henry approached, an expression of quiet politeness on his face. Christine introduced them, feeling an odd sense of relief that Henry remained grounded and kind in the face of such tension. Mia slid back into the booth, tension easing as she chatted lightly with George about random topics, weather, diner food, anything to diffuse the awkwardness. Eventually, Christine placed a tentative hand on her father's arm. "Let's try to stay in touch," she offered, the words surprising even her. "I'm leaving for London soon, but we can exchange emails, maybe phone calls." George exhaled, nodding. "I'd like that." After goodbyes, he slipped out into the cold night, leaving Christine both drained and oddly freer, as if shedding a weight she'd carried for years. Henry wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "How do you feel?" he asked gently. She leaned into him, relief trickling through her. "Like I can face what comes next without that old ache holding me back." Outside, the New York skyline twinkled, reflecting her renewed sense of possibility. She had found reconciliation, even if fragile, and the horizon ahead now seemed wider, shared with those she loved and even those who had once caused her pain. 2 years after that fateful sunrise in Central Park, Christine found herself standing once again amid the park's vibrant greenery. Only this time, it was decorated with elegant but simple touches. White ribbons draped on a small wooden arch, rows of wooden chairs filled with friends and family, and a soft violin tune played by Mr. Guzman, the elderly neighbor from her old apartment building. The air buzzed with anticipation under the warm autumn sun. She smoothed the folds of her ivory dress, nothing overly elaborate, just a flowing gown that accentuated her natural grace. Mia fussed with Christine's hair, pinning one final curl into place. Nearby, Henry stood at the makeshift altar, clad in a tailored suit that emphasized his tall frame. His dark hair, faintly touched by more silver at the temples, gleamed in the soft light, eyes scanning the small gathering with a reverent mix of excitement and awe. Christine's mother, Eleanor, dabbed her eyes from the front row, beaming with pride she once struggled to show. Even Margaret Reynolds, Henry's mother, wore a gentle smile, radiating acceptance that had been hard-won over time. In another seat, George Cooper sat quietly, clutching a small camera, determined to capture moments he had missed for far too long. When the violin switched to a tender melody, Christine stepped forward, each step brimming with emotion. 2 years of shared dreams, struggles, laughter and tears had led to this ceremony. She reached Henry's side, meeting his luminous blue gaze. Mia, acting as officiant, cleared her throat, speaking in a voice made warm by friendship. "We gather here in the place where Christine and Henry first met, on a bench, at sunrise, in a moment of heartbreak that turned into a chance at love. Today, we celebrate the union of 2 hearts, 2 lives, once separated by wealth and circumstance, now woven together by choice." Henry squeezed Christine's hand, turning to her with a steady voice. "Christine, you found me at my lowest point, not in a boardroom or at a gala, but on a park bench. You comforted a stranger without demanding to know who he was or what he owned. In that single act, I saw more compassion than I'd seen in a lifetime of social events. I vow to honor that compassion every day, to stand by your dreams, and to always remember that love thrives in honesty, not pretense." Tears glistened in Christine's eyes. She reached into the pocket of her dress, pulling out a small, folded paper. Her voice trembled, but she pressed on. "Henry, when we met, I was struggling too, wondering if my art mattered, if I could ever belong in a city that seemed so big. But you saw me. You believed in my photographs, in my desire to reveal truths hidden in everyday moments. You taught me I could stand on my own while leaning on someone else for strength. I vow to cherish the man you are, not the CEO the world sees. and to keep capturing the wonder and beauty in each day we share. Their voices carried softly across the rows of guests, many wiping tears. The hush that followed felt sacred, broken only by the gentle rustle of leaves overhead. Mia smiled, nodding for them to exchange rings, simple bands chosen for their understated elegance. When the rings were in place, Mia's voice took on a buoyant tone. By the power vested in me by the state of New York, and more importantly, by the bond of friendship, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss. Henry cupped Christine's face, and she tilted her head to meet his kiss, the applause bursting around them. In that instant, the world seemed to spin slower, each moment crystallized in the lens of every attending heart. Cameras clicked, but Christine barely noticed. All she felt was the solid warmth of Henry's embrace, the certainty that they had chosen each other freely day after day, vow after vow. Later, at a simple reception in a nearby gallery space, Christine spotted her father and mother talking quietly, the first time they'd been in the same room in years. Mia and Henry's friends from London clinked glasses with colleagues from Reynolds Financial. Through it all, Christine clutched the vintage Leica Henry had gifted her, snapping candid shots of laughter, hugs, and tears of joy. Standing by an open window, looking out at the park's autumn colors, Christine felt her eyes sting with happy tears. This was the real culmination of every heartbreak and breakthrough, an infinite portrait of love, resilience, and hope. And she knew, in that quiet, certain moment, they had not found a fairy tale ending, but rather a brave and beautiful beginning, one she and Henry would keep discovering, frame by frame, for all the tomorrows to come. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.